Well, a very good morning once again to South Africa who are tuning in this morning to our special breakfast with the Finance Minister, Malusi Gigaba. We, together with independent media, are bringing this to you in the comfort of your own home so that you can get to see and hear from the Finance Minister after he had his maiden midterm budget session yesterday. Wasn't an easy one. In fact, this was possibly one of the hardest midterm budgets that any Finance Minister has had to deliver since 1994. We have the man himself here. Minister, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
How are you feeling this morning? I mean, yesterday was a difficult day for you.
Look, I think everybody, generally speaking, I guess it's human nature, you would like to be the bearer of good news, exciting news. I'm sure many people would have in this position loved to say the economy is going to be growing at this vibrant percent, the revenue buoyancy is still maintained, there is a budget surplus, but I carried difficult news, and I think somebody had to do the difficult job, and I had to carry those difficult news to the nation, that the books are as they are. These are difficult times. The economy is not performing as well as it should. Yes, it's starting to grow. Yes, in the medium-term outlook, it is going to grow. But the growth is too small for us as a country, for the type of economy that we are, to actually be able to make the types of impact that we want. So I had to carry the difficult news to the nation, face up to our people and say, the times are tough. If we don't change the way we do as government and business and labor, we all need to act together. We all need not just to come at the harvest and enjoy the fruit of the harvest. We need to be involved in the planting. It's a Letsima clarion call. Everybody must fold their sleeves, go down to the fields, plant, ensure that when we come to harvest, it's something that we've planted ourselves. So I think as a maiden speech, it's much better to start that way because you can only move upward from there.
Well, we can only hope so. And that's, I think, what South Africans are looking for. It's looking for the hope at the end of this very tough time that we're finding ourselves in. How long are we going to be in this for? When can we finally see a little bit of a turnaround? Because from what you said is that we've got at least another 3-4 very difficult years ahead of us.
But I also said that we have it in our power to change our course. So the 0%, the 0.7% growth that we projected for this year can be changed by us if we take certain decisions. If government increases the pace and scale of structural reforms, and we resolve the niggling uncertainties around telecommunications issues, the spectrum policies, if we resolve the deadlock around mining, if we resolve and implement speedily the SOE reforms, reduce the debt of the state-owned companies, improve their governance, recruit and bring on board capable and efficient, competent managers in our state-owned companies. If we do that as government, we will build the confidence. If we come up with a stimulus program for manufacturing, for tourism, the areas that I highlighted in the speech are the areas which need our focus so that we can expand production, increase our revenues, and support the growth of our economy beyond what is projected over the medium term. I think we will do well. But business must come on board and also support localization, work with government, and ensure that we work together to boost business confidence. We've already been working with the CEO's initiative around some of the reforms that you are seeing in some of the state-owned companies, and we need that greater working together with business on a continuous basis so that we can unlock the private sector investment, productive capital for investment. And labor must also come on board. We need to increase productivity. We're going to get into a difficult wage negotiations period with public sector unions. We must ensure that the outcome of that does not undermine the fiscal framework as it is. So all of us have a duty to ensure that we change our course. If we do that, the difficult situation can very quickly turn into a period where there is higher investor and consumer confidence, there are greater investments, government revenues are also increasing, and government is also able to spend in order to drive demand in the economy.
I think one of the biggest issues, however, and you mentioned it now yourself, is these state-owned entities that are really something of a great concern to you, to South Africans, and to foreign investors. It's swallowing a lot of money from the budget, and that's a big problem. Now, of course, you were also in charge of state-owned enterprises during your time, being the Minister of State-owned Enterprises. It must look like a very different picture and a different scene from the outside now. In the Finance Ministry, and when you were in that department, would you have done anything differently?
If I had known back then some of the things that I know now, indeed, I would have done certain things differently. But look, I think back then we led the radical changes in terms of the procurement plans of the state-owned companies, where we brought in more black professionals, which was a good decision, and I reiterated that decision yesterday. I reaffirmed that decision that it still needs to be done so that we bring in more black professionals into the services of state-owned companies. We expanded the capital expansion programs of some of the state-owned companies, for example, Eskom and Transnet. Transnet in particular, where we grew it from 110 billion rand over 5 years to 307 billion rand over 7 years. So there were decisions that we took. I had passed a policy that said if there are vacancies on the boards of state-owned companies or among the management positions, they need to be filled in as a matter of fact within 3 months. No position at executive level must be vacant for longer than 3 months. But there were other things that we could have done better in terms of financial management and dealing with the challenges that we knew, that we know now would impact on the government balance sheet, because ultimately the government guarantees that state-owned companies seek impact on the government balance sheet, because once the government balance sheet is viewed as weak, the debt is growing, the debt of state-owned companies is growing, the ratings agencies and investors become jittery. It then means sitting in this position today, I have a responsibility to work together very closely with not only the Minister of Public Enterprises, but with all other ministers who are shareholder ministers in different entities, to ensure they understand the fiscal risks that we face as a country as a result of the instability, the perceptions of corruption, and other challenges that are being faced in state-owned companies. We need to become more robust as government, and that's why in the speech yesterday, I also made mention of the fact that we are going to, work hard in the next few months and years to reduce the government guarantees and the debts of state-owned companies by improving the governance, management, and financial stabilization of the SOEs. But at the same time, the National Treasury is to come up with a policy proposal to change the government guarantee framework policy so that we become more stringent. There is no way that we should continue providing government guarantees for operational expenditure, for waste, and for financial mismanagement.
Yeah.
In that case, the government guarantee serves as a perverse incentive. We need to put that to an end and ensure that we provide it only in the instance where it's going to support capital expansion.
Well, that there brings the question in, and the issue of SAA, because you have Telkom, and everybody's talking about it, and I know you've answered this question many, many times, but the markets didn't like it. They still don't like it, selling off the shares in Telkom to fund SAA. Why are we not just privatizing this airline? If you have a look at what could have already been accomplished with the money spent on trying to save it, we would have a very different picture right now. Why are you insistent on saving the airline?
There are three reasons. One is that there's a positive role that SAA plays in the South African economy, broadly. 10,500 people employed by the airline. If you were to let SAA default, it means that those 10,500 people and their dependents would then, their incomes would be jeopardized. Now, that's a risk you don't want to take when the economy is not performing well. SAA has been said to be South Africa's ambassador on air. It sells South Africa's culture, South Africa's economy, South Africa tourism as a destination, and South Africa's cuisine to its passengers, to peoples all over the world. It connects South Africa with other parts. We are on the southernmost tip of the African continent, and therefore the security of air travel from anywhere in the world to South Africa needs to be secured and not dependent on other airlines, on somebody else. We need to secure that because we need to continue securing the ability of foreigners to come to South Africa and South Africans going abroad. But there are two other reasons. The second reason is you would have had a trigger effect. If SAA defaulted on its debt, SAA would have, the other lender, you would have triggered reaction from other lenders who would also have demanded their money back, which would have meant we would have to pay more than we paid in this 10 billion rand recapitalization, because in addition to SAA, the lenders of the biggest risk we face, Eskom, would also look at SAA and say, okay, if government can default on a smaller debt, what could happen to a bigger debt? And then they would have demanded their money on Eskom, which would have Eskom is by far the biggest risk we face as the country. And we need to deal with SAA, with Eskom very carefully and ensure that we improve governance as a matter of urgency. And so our action at SAA, we knew that we are trying to prevent a trigger effect at SAA, at Eskom and other state-owned companies. But the third reason really was that if we did not act as we did at SAA, even if you were to say privatize SAA in the midst of a crisis, you would have had to pay someone to buy it, because you would have sold an asset at its lowest moment when its share price would have been so low that nobody would want to take it. And some of the businesses have been saying to us that, even if you were to sell me SAA, you would need to pay me to buy it. So you need to put it into a position where when you bring in a strategic equity partner, there is value to be added by the strategic equity partner. And that value would be in the form of capital that would fund the turnaround strategy of SAA, because the money that we've given SAA has gone into settling the debts, and part of it has been reserved for the cash flow management of the airline. But secondly, when you bring in the strategic equity partner, it would be to bring in private sector expertise, both at board and executive level, to assist the airline to be able to move forward. So you are rebuilding the asset. In a way, we are rebuilding the assets that is SAA. And when we dealt with the Telkom shares, it was with a view that if possible, in the next 5 years, we would be able to buy back those shares and continue keeping them as government.
All right. We are going to be taking quite a few questions from the floor as well, and I'm sure there'll be a couple more with regard to SAA. I, however, want to move on to the big elephant in the room that everybody wanted to hear from you, and yet, amazingly, you didn't really touch on it too much, and that is nuclear. Let's talk nuclear, shall we? Because there wasn't a mention of it yesterday. Okay, but your colleague afterwards was caught in an interview saying South Africa is still on track with nuclear. But what we got from you yesterday was that we cannot afford it, is that we are in a very bad situation economically. We are in debt. We are borrowing faster than we can pay that debt back. How can we afford nuclear? And is it really still on the cards?
There is no misalignment in this regard. Nuclear remains part of the energy mix. In terms of the integrated resource plan that is being undertaken, nuclear will remain part of the energy mix. So there will come a point, sometime in future, when the economy is buoyant and growing very fast, when there is high demand for electricity, when the generation capacity we have is inadequate to carry the demand which can only be provided by baseload electricity generation. When you say, because we've made carbon emissions commitment as a result of the COP processes, where you say you need baseload renewable electricity generation which can be provided by nuclear, and that the renewable power stations are small to be able to absorb the high demand which is needed from baseload generation, then you need to go the nuclear direction. At that time, we will. But for now, what we are saying is that perhaps in the next foreseeable future...
Well, give me a timeline. What do you think? 5 years, 10 years?
Over the next 5 years, I don't think South Africa is going to be able to afford nuclear. Our economy is growing slowly. We actually have 5,700 megawatt of excess electricity at the present moment. And that 5,700 megawatt of excess electricity is bigger than the biggest power station in South Africa when it operates at full capacity, and that is Medupi. And Medupi is the 4th largest power station in the world. So 5,700 megawatt of excess electricity is 900 megawatt in excess of Medupi at full capacity. The economy can't afford nuclear at the present moment. We've got excess electricity. There are no intensive users that are taking up the generation capacity that we have. And so nuclear will remain part of the energy mix.
But not now. That's what you're saying.
The budget
not now.
Can't afford it, and the country also can't afford nuclear right now.
Well, there you go. You're on the record saying that. Do you think, we've got to take an ad break, but what I really need to get from you is a sense of, do you think the ratings agencies are looking at us and saying, okay, I've got more confidence in South Africa now, I don't think we need to downgrade them? Critics are saying that what was announced yesterday is almost the final nail in our coffin, that we will get another downgrade. What do you think?
It's difficult for me to predict how the ratings agencies are going to react for a number of reasons. I think the first one is that yesterday we were announcing the bad news. You know, we were opening up the books before the nation and saying we've got a difficult story to tell. We were candid with the nation.
Yeah.
We didn't sugarcoat anything.
Which I think everybody is grateful for. Because you were very open about it.
The things as they are. But secondly, because we could have put in, you know, if you say you have a 50.8 billion rand revenue shortfall, we didn't say how we are going to make up for that. Are we going to raise taxes? Are we going to cut more? What we said is that we are working towards identifying more programs to delay or to stop, from which we will get the money that we will use as government to cover up for some of our expenses. In the confidence boosting measures in July this year, we had said that the private sector participation framework has been identified. Some of the SOEs will have to have strategic equity partners which would generate capital that would assist them to reduce their contingent liabilities and ensure that their debt goes down. But in a way, we need to come up with very concrete measures, and that we can do best during the budget, to come up with very concrete measures on how we're going to deal with government debt, because the budget deficit of 4.3% up from the projected 3.1 was quite a shocker for everybody. And so we need to take drastic steps in the next few months, not even in budget next year. I hear a lot of people saying, would you act before the ANC National Conference? What would the next leadership of the ANC do if you were to do things now? What if they would change it? Everybody knows that the economy is in crisis, not on December 22nd. The economy is in trouble right now. And so we need to act right now and take the tough decisions that are going to restore confidence, that are going to boost our economy. And any leadership of the ANC or leadership of the country that would emerge after 2019 will blame us if we did not take the tough decisions now. So what we have done is to tell the country that this is the state of the economy as it is, and then we are going to take decisions that will need to change this situation. As I said yesterday, and I repeat it again, it's all in our hands. We must increase the pace and scale of structural reforms. We must stop dithering on SOE reforms. We must reduce the debts and government and guarantees of state-owned companies and become more stringent. And we must deal with the governance, the management, and the financial management of state-owned companies.
Are your fellow ministers working with you? Because everybody talks about the fact that there are a lot of divisions within the ANC. We're going to take a break. I'm going to give you a second to think about this. But are they working with you? Are you working in a difficult environment? Former finance ministers have said it was very difficult for them and that nobody wanted to work with them, but rather against them. And I want to find out what it's like for you. Let's take a break. We'll see you after this.